Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr, and this is episode 283 of CryptoBiography, and it is the part 15 of The Smallest Magician, and here we go. They headed back towards the city. Donegal was using some sort of spell that allowed him to see where the last two assassins had headed. Emby mostly tried to keep up, her eyes and nostrils still streaming. It slowly got better, but she could still not see nearly as well as usual. The assassins had gone off-road, presumably thinking to keep some cover between themselves and the sorcerer who had suddenly attacked them. Donegal was moving quickly, which led Emby to suspect that he could tell they were still pretty far ahead of them. This continued for some minutes, until he stopped suddenly and held up a hand to get Emby to stop. He moved his head close to her ear and whispered, "I have lost the trail. I suspect they know we're following and are preparing an ambush. Time for you to camouflage." She did so, finding the distraction of her still healing burns not too great a trouble. If she was unsure of her success, it was gone when Donegal made a short nod and then focused ahead of them. She was determined to be as much help as possible and moved a bit to the side, looking with her improving vision for any hint of the two. It was very dark out, with just a bit of moon and stars lighting the area, and occasional trees adding to the gloom. Her master should have no sight at all, except through his magic. There was one human and one kobold to find. The human should be a bit easier to spot. He was a little larger. Also, kobolds tended to naturally blend, even in darkened situations. And her hearing was more acute than a human's as well, with her large, pointed ears giving fine directionality to her hearing. She listened intently, but could hear... Let me actually take the but out of that, because I didn't actually write a but. So, do a little that. We're going to start at the top of the paragraph. The human should be a bit easier to spot. He was a little larger. Also, kobolds tended to naturally blend, even in darkened situations. And her hearing was more acute than a human's as well, with her large, pointed ears giving fine directionality to her hearing. She listened intently, but could hear nothing yet. She glanced over at Donegal. He was making a very small gesture with his hand. He was pointing towards a tree. One or both of the assassins must be there. Emby kept her spell up, but moved a little away from her master. She wanted him to have a clear field to work with. She could just start to make out the figure behind the tree. She was starting to decide what to do, other than try not to get in her master's way, when there was a movement behind the figure. There was a strange sound, and then the figure slumped to the ground. He fell into her view. It was the last human assassin. She could not tell, though, what had happened. Her master had cast a spell, perhaps? She looked over, but he seemed to be frozen, tense. No, she thought. He doesn't know either. Frozen or not, she saw a bit of shimmer around Donegal. He had put up some kind of extra protection. She wondered if he had done the same for her, or if the distance was now too great, or if he was relying on her keeping up her camouflage. There was a movement to the right, and then more, and be spun around to face it. The final assassin, the kobold, was bolting. But that was only the first movement. There were other figures springing up behind trees and bushes. They too were kobolds, she saw with shock. They were armed, and a few were throwing ropes over the assassin kobold, who had clearly given up trying to run, being surrounded. Others were turned toward her master, holding weapons, but not immediately threatening to either throw missiles at him or charge him physically. She was not sure if these new kobolds were aware of her presence. "Can you understand me?" Donegal asked them. Emby could tell that, although taken by surprise, Donegal was not yet afraid. Several of them made some noises which Emby did not understand. Apparently neither did Donegal. He looked at the kobold assassin, now trussed up and quite helpless. "Do you understand them?" he asked. "I don't doubt you understand me." The assassin looked around as though wanting to make sure that anything he said wouldn't result in his being immediately stabbed. "I understand both," he said in a strong accent Emby had never heard before. It certainly didn't sound like her speech, which was quite in line with all of the humans she had grown up with. What do they want? Why are they capturing you? Donegal asked him. I don't know them. I will have to ask. The assassin had said some words to a kobold which, now that Emby looked around, seemed likely to be their leader. He held himself a little more upright than the others, and though he had only one weapon, it was a seemingly well-made sword, where the others all had cheaper weapons, mostly spears and bows with knives as backup. The kobold listened to the assassin, then held a moment before deciding to answer. What he said was just as unintelligible as everything else, but Emby could tell there was a bite of impatience in the voice. The assassin listened to the leader, then turned to Donegal. They have followed us for some time. They learned that there were kobolds acting as assassins for the humans. That would be me and my dead companion back there. They say they have some questions. Will they let me go without trouble? There was an exchange. Then, they want to know what happened to the other one. What other one? But such a bluff didn't translate well. The answer came back quickly. They saw your friend, a kobold like us. They want to know where she is. That took Emby aback. They had seen her, and they knew she was a she, but apparently they didn't know who she was? Donegal gave up the bluff. She is my apprentice. She is under my protection. I asked her to go into hiding. I doubt you will be able to find her. Will you let us leave peaceably? The assassin relayed the message, and there was a lot of murmuring between the various kobolds. Emby looked around. She had been caught up first in the situation, then in the conversation. This would not do. She quickly found all the kobolds she could see and counted them. There were 18. Of course, with that many, there could even be more hidden or perhaps traveling not far away. The assassin received the answer from the leader of the kobolds. Emby noticed a bit of hesitation before he relayed the answer. We must see the kobold woman. It was difficult to tell how much of a threat there was if they didn't accede to this kobold leader's wish, but with 12 of them all armed, Emby had no doubt it would be a dicey proposition to tell them no flat out. Donegal answered, She is under my protection. What do you mean by seeing her? What do you want from her? This answer was given and was answered. She is one of us. We want to see who she is. Donegal did not know what to say. Perhaps Emby thought he was trying to discern what she wanted. This thought was confirmed when he looked in her direction, though he tried to keep it quick to keep them from finding out where she was. He was covering it by making it look as though he were just thinking things over. She looked back at him and just shrugged. She didn't know what her answer would have been if he had been allowed to just talk to her. If it could be guaranteed safe, she knew part of her would be curious to know more about them, but that was impossible. There could be no guarantee she could think of that would make the situation safe. And that's the end of the show episode for this week. I hope you're enjoying it. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And we also now have a Mastodon account, which actually I haven't made it yet, but I will probably be making a Mastodon account in the next week or so. So you can start looking for us there too. So I can't give it to you yet because I don't have it yet, but I will make one. I'm sort of learning it as a backup since Twitter seems to be having problems. And also, there's other reasons too. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying it. If you have any comments or questions, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or for now, hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. Thank you for listening. Words and music, copyright 2022, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.